It's time for album of the year, our snubs and dubs. So again, I'll go ahead with mine. The choices were New Blue Sun by Andre 3000, Cowboy Carter by Beyonce, Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter, Brat by Charli XCX, Djesse Volume 4 by Jacob Collier, Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish, Chappell Roan and the Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, and The Tortured Poets Department by Taylor Swift. So for me, when I first was looking at this category, I'll start with my snub because two of my favorite albums this year were Samurai by Lupe Fiasco and Ultra 85 by Logic. And I loved Ultra 85 so much. I feel like it should have definitely been considered for hip hop album of the year and potentially for album of the year because Logic does such a great job crafting his skits in the album, which is something that a lot of albums don't have, or a lot of albums don't pay attention to as much, or like having a story. Like he's literally telling a story through the skits throughout his songs on the album, and it all kind of connects. And it was incredible. So that's my snub. But I realized, I think after listening to this album on this list, I decided I think this one is still my dub. I still think that it deserves to win, and I hope that it does. And that is Djesse Volume 4 by Jacob Collier. And I kind of hate to say it on like the podcast, but like I didn't really get into. I've heard Jacob Collier before, but his voice always kind of freaked me out because it's like he's got such like a bass quality that he still has even when he's going up to like falsetto. I think I heard one music review that called him a sleepy Rick Ashley. Which right? It was like, well, that's a little offensive, but whatever. And it's kind of true that is kind of what he sounds like. Like I can't deny it that much. So it was a little hard for me to get into his music, but the album itself and the instrumentation kept me in it through the whole time. And by the time I got to the end, I was like, his voice doesn't bother me at all anymore. So because he first of all, it's like you can't even give this album a genre because he goes from like electronica to pop to R&B to old school. He has so many different genres on there, and he brings out the best in every single guest that he has. Like, there's a lot of artists when they feature a song on their artist, they'll kind of make feature an artist on their song. They'll kind of make their song fit the style of the artist. For Jacob Collier, it's like the artists will fit the style of his music when they come on there. And I think the best example is Witness Me featuring Shawn Mendes. And Shawn Mendes sounds so incredibly good on that song. I'm like, if he had an entire album of songs that sounded like Witness Me, my Spotify rap would have Shawn Mendes at the top. Like he made him sound right. He wasn't hiding him behind all these synths and things like that, which I feel like a lot of production does with Shawn Mendes' more popular music. It's like you got to hear the rich quality of his voice against these lush guitars. The entire album for me was incredible. There's a John Mayer solo on it where he plays guitar on a song that sounds amazing. There's a couple of songs where I will say that like he does a little bit too much, and it's like, okay, you can kind of like ease back, like rein it in a little bit. But overall, compared to all these albums, I think I have to give it Jacob Collier, simply for the musical quality and texture that he created.
Yeah, I haven't listened to all of it, but I've listened to you sent me some that you were like, definitely check these three songs out from the album and use it as like a litmus test if you'll enjoy the rest of it. And two of the three I was really vibing with and was really enjoying. So I definitely will go back and listen to the rest of the album because yeah, it was I wasn't super familiar with Jacob Collier before, and so his voice did initially catch me off guard because I was not expecting such a deep and like intense and impassioned voice, especially in the range that you were discussing, like that he can perform in. I'm almost like intrigued, even if I didn't like it. I kind of am intrigued to see what else are you going to do with that voice, man?
Right.
Like, what can you do with that thing? Because that's impressive.
All right, Ty.
All right.
Let us know.
So, for me, I'll get this one over quickly. Obviously, my album of the year was Brat because, yeah, it was. But I do want to say Cowboy Carter was definitely up there for me. And I do want to say that New Blue Sun, I'm glad to see it on here. I don't think it would ever win, but I just remember when it first came out, how it was treated as a rap album because Andre 3000 is a rapper and there's not a single word in the album. It's just him playing the flute and very similar with Beyonce, with her not being
Hmm.
played on country channels when she first came out, because like to what you were talking about, Kate, she had this legacy of being this pop icon, and then here she comes with a country album, but country stations don't want to play it. And so to have both of them represented for the genres that they're actually like for, and to be at the point of like the general album of the year, I'm just very happy to see them there. It's just Brat to me was like the perfect album. I just enjoyed it too much. My snub, there were a few I just would love to give just a quick like shout out to that I really appreciate that I don't think I'll get a chance to mention
Go ahead, man.
elsewhere.
Go for it.
I really loved Charm by Clairo this year.
Okay.
Very, very almost sleepy's not the right word. It's just very like relaxing, like cafe
Okay.
music that I really loved. Um Flight B 741 by King Gizzard and the little Lizard Wizard, a rock group from Australia that I really
Okay.
love. Had an album this year that was really great. But my and of course Mid Spiral by Bad Bad Not Good
Yeah, it's
was just really
fantastic
great
one.
jazz that I loved.
Hmm.
But my snub, and I don't know if it even really counts because I don't know the timing of when it released versus the cutoff, The New Sound by Jordy Greep, the singer, the lead, the front man of what used to be Black Midi before they broke up earlier this year, released an album. And it is intense and almost like a spoken word poetry set to like heavily jazz influenced rock, and it feels epic in like an opera at times, and it feels like such a wide net of influence that he's pulling from. I loved Black Midi when they were together and how crazy uh, they would they would produce their music. It sounded unlike anything else I had listened to when I
Hmm.
listened to them. And then I feel like for his first ever album after the band broke up, for him to still be making music that sounds different after I already kind of knew what to expect from what he did before was like even more mind blowing to me. And
Yeah.
so it's an album that I can't it's not as easy listening to me, but it's definitely made me like rethink, okay, how do I even approach an artist? It like you can change the game like to me, but then you can still change it. Like just because you do something very influential does not mean that you are out of gas and that you can continue to surprise. And, just to highlight that, I think we saw that with Beyonce as well. And I think I saw that with Andre 3000 as well. Just for me as the snub, I want to shout out a different genre
Yeah.
that
No,
I
go
just
for it.
really appreciated. So I think
Absolutely love it.
great year for old artists doing new great
New
things.
things. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
love to like hear these because I haven't listened to everything that you've mentioned. So I'm like, all right, now I have like a whole set
I
to go
know.
to
I'm
stuff.
like, we didn't talk about
Honestly,
any of these albums.
honestly, that's the excuse of this podcast. It's just all of it's just people getting together to give music recommendations. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I love it. I think for me, it would be, and I have to say before I say this, I am not like a diehard Beyonce fan. I like her voice fine. I know she's like phenomenally athletic as a vocalist and as a human being. But I think what she did in the Cowboy Carter album, I think she just displayed a diversity that is pretty unmatched on this list. Maybe somewhat in the Jacob Collier album, but it's like what as somebody who trained as a classical vocalist, she has people out here being exposed to Caro Mio Ben that would never have been exposed to that. Like you're never gonna like go deep dive into like Italian art song if you're not already in that like classical vocal world. So I think like the breadth of what she did to like surprise and delight, because it's either like innovation or mastery that captures me. And I think she displayed like innovation and mastery in the like the spread of what she did in that album. And of course, like lots of other amazing albums on this list. I mean, I don't listen to a ton of Chappell Roan, but I think the innovation that she did harkens back to like Annie Lennox Walking on Broken Glass or 8675309. You know, like she does like HOTTOGO. And one of these like spelled out songs that people just get hooked on. So I you know, like maybe, I mean, I'm glad to see that one for sure on the list. Also, like, I don't think this is part of what we're doing, but I'm tired of seeing Taylor on these lists, man. I'm just like, why we gotta be so vanilla, man? Like, why are we doing? I'm just tired of seeing, hey, I'm gonna regurgitate the same chord progressions in the same way. Every now and then she throws in a production twist. And so much of her discography is I'm the victim. This man, that man, this production agency, I want my masters back. And I appreciate her as a businesswoman and appreciate a lot of her like business acumen in the music industry space. But I am freaking tired of seeing her on these lists.
I mean, to be honest, we had considered reviewing the Tortured Poets department. And after we listened to it, it was kind of like, I feel like we'd only be reviewing this because Taylor Swift released it.
Right. Because
like,
of an orbit that she just has.
Because of name, it feels like. Right. And like, it's not like it's a bad album necessarily, but it's like, it feels like it's here because she did it. Like if anyone else released this album, I feel like nobody would be paying attention to it.
It's like chicken without seasoning. It's not offensive, but who wants to mainline in your diet?
Right. If you're starving to death, sure, you can eat the boiled chicken.
Right.
But no one is who's gonna choose boiled chicken?
But if you're not,
their meal.
I'm gonna need some seasoning on my chicken. Yeah.
So many people, there are so many people who are like in this McNugget mentality. And just like we see with McDonald's, not to like call it back to food again, but like McDonald's is in every country all over the world. Just because something is prolific doesn't mean it's high quality. Nobody's like, I can't wait to go eat at McDonald's in Japan. I mean, I'm sure there's someone who is, but just because it's prolific doesn't mean it's high quality.
Yeah. And I think it's disappointing as just like an industry in of itself that there's always going to be just like, all right, there's going to be a slot for next year for album that's just going to be reserved for Taylor or for song or for something. Just that, and not even just Taylor, there's other artists like I feel about like Drake. I feel very similarly to Taylor Swift. Drake is to like the rap and hip hop world of just there's always going to be a slot reserved for him regardless of what he makes. And it's just disappointing to see because you'd hope with like something like the Grammys, it can be used to celebrate kind of like what you're talking about, Kate, something that's like innovative or it's like someone brings something back in like a refreshing return to form that's like it's reminiscent of something that we know, but you do it in a way that just breathes life into it again. And I don't get any of those feelings with anything that she does anymore.
So we all agree we're swapping out the Tortured Poets department for Ultra 85. That's the consensus here. Just
because the most insane thing she's done is date Travis Kelce and or like Drake. The most innovative thing that's happened with him is this like beef he has with Kendrick.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, nobody's winning a Grammy for an argument.
Right.